Well, hello there, everyone. I'm Dr. Leslie Kernisan, board-certified geriatrician and the founder of the website betterhealthwhileaging.net. And this is the Helping Older Parents video podcast, where I cover the best ways to support aging parents and other older loved ones so they can live better lives in their later years. I also often address common caregiving concerns and dilemmas, like what to do if you're worried about an older person's memory or safety, how to deal with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, and how to help your older loved one get the care they need. In today's episode, I want to address a super common concern that comes up often regarding aging parents or sometimes other older loved ones, which is what to do if you've been worried about them, especially if you've been noticing worrisome changes in somebody who was previously fairly well and fairly independent, but now you've noticed some changes and you're thinking that they might need more help or they might need to make some kind of change. Now, what do I mean by a worrisome change? Well, there are all kinds of ways that aging parents or other older adults can worry people who love them. Some of the most common changes that I hear about include concerns about changes in memory, concerns about the older person looking frailer or having more falls, them having difficulty with driving or finances, or maybe they just seem less able or with it than they were before. And in my experience, when adult children, or sometimes it's a spouse, when people notice these kinds of worrisome changes, they often have trouble moving ahead on doing something about it. And that's for a couple reasons. So often they're not sure, is this change significant or not? They're not sure what to do. And also their older parent or other older loved one is often resistant or reluctant to engage in addressing the concerns of their family members. And so it's really easy for people to find themselves in this stuck spot where they're concerned, but they don't know what to do. So that's what I want to address in this episode, because in this episode, I'm going to explain to you the method that I would use or that I would recommend for you, a method that you can use to get yourself unstuck. I'm going to spell out a step-by-step process that you can use to be more effective in figuring out what is going on with your aging parent and how you can help. And it will also probably reduce any conflicts you've been having with your parent when it comes to these concerns. So especially if you're going to be visiting your aging parent or other older loved one anytime soon, maybe you have a holiday or vacation coming up, or maybe you just spent some time with them and now you're worried, this video is for you and I'm excited to share this with you. So specifically, I'm going to talk about something to stop doing right away, something that in my experience, lots of families are doing. I'm going to tell you what to do instead. And then I'm going to talk about 3 key types of problems that you should check your aging parent for. And I'm going to talk about specific signs that you can check for. I'm then going to cover how to talk to your parent about these concerns or things that you've noticed. And then I'm going to finish up with a couple of suggestions about taking next steps. So we're going to get started with that. But before I get started, I have a very quick request, which is if you are here and you find this topic interesting, or you've been finding my channel interesting, my video podcast interesting, if you haven't subscribed yet, if you could please go ahead and subscribe, it would mean a lot to me. It really does help me out. It helps other people find the channel when you subscribe, and it helps support the work that I'm doing. Okay, back to the episode. So what to stop doing? The main thing you want to stop doing if you've been worried about your aging parent or another older loved one is you want to stop the explanations and stop trying to get them to understand. So you want to stop, for instance, explaining why you're concerned. You want to stop explaining why they shouldn't be upset about your concerns. You want to stop explaining why they should make the change you think they need to make, whether that is go see the doctor about something you've noticed or make some other kind of change. You also want to stop trying to get them to do something. And the reason why we want to stop these things is that it's totally normal to want to help them to understand and to want to help them make a needed change. But what I have found over years and years in working with older adults is that it's almost always too soon if we try to take action before we do some other work, some other stuff, which I'm going to explain in this video to make sure we've better understood the situation, better understood their take on it, and also better understood what are the options for taking action. So if you're concerned, chances are it's not yet time to take action and try to get your aging parent to do something. Instead, what I would tell you is that it is right now the time for something that I call taking stock, which means getting more information to better understand what exactly is going on, what specifically are you dealing with in terms of a situation, and how does your parent see it, and how do they feel about it? So in general, when we notice something concerning about an older person we care about, whether it's your aging parent, your spouse, your neighbor, what I suggest is first you take stock, you gather information, especially by observing them and by talking to others. You also talk to the older person, your aging parent or whoever it is, with the aim of listening and understanding them. Next, before you take action, you take aim, which means you research and learn more about what are your options, what are the known better approaches for dealing with whatever came up during your taking stock phase. And then, much later, you take action. So another way to think about it is that if we have a concern, first, we need to have a detective phase where we just get more information about what's going on and how the older person sees it. Next, we're going to have a research phase where we find out more about what are the options for dealing with this, what are considered the best ways to deal with it, because there are better ways to deal with these things, I can tell you that. And then later, we will have an action phase. So for the rest of this episode, I'm going to focus on the taking stock part. I'm going to talk about what's most useful and important for you to be looking for during your detective phase. And if you want to know about this in greater depth, I do have a book that I published a few years ago. It's called When Your Aging Parent Needs Help, and it goes into a lot more detail on all the things I'm going to cover in this episode. So again, in the detective phase, how do we find out more about what's happening with our aging parent, and how do we learn more about how our parent sees this, and also how they are seeing their life in general? During taking stock, when it comes especially to observation, there are 3 types of problems that I check for when I myself am asked to evaluate an older person and that I recommend you check for. First is, are there any signs of problems with memory or thinking? Next is, what specific life tasks is the older person seeming to have difficulty with? And third is, what kinds of safety problems are occurring? So let's go over those in a little bit more depth. And again, you can ask your aging parent or the older person about this, but what you especially want to do is try to get this information through direct observation and by talking to other people who are in contact with your parent, might have seen what's going on, maybe talking to them regularly. So how to check on memory and thinking. You can't and should not attempt to diagnose your parent with any kind of, memory issue or cognitive issue. However, you can learn what is considered concerning or a warning sign when it comes to memory issues and thinking problems. So often I found that people aren't entirely clear on what's normal aging and what's abnormal, but you should know actually what is normal aging and what is less normal. And I'm going to cover the most important aspects of that in this video. I also covered it in greater depth, on my website, on Better Health While Aging, in the book, because it's important to know what warrants requesting an evaluation. Because if something is off with memory or thinking, ideally people would get evaluated. Now, it can be challenging to do that. I'm going to cover that in, an upcoming episode for sure. But we do want to identify, could we be dealing with a memory or thinking problem as early as possible? So what is normal when it comes to aging brains? So the changes that are normal is that it is normal as we get older to experience a decline in mental processing speed and flexibility. So that basically means that it takes us a little longer to process something. It takes us a little longer sometimes to switch things that we're thinking about. Also, as we get older, our ability to focus in busy or distracting environments does go down. So what this means is that for older adults, they need increased time and practice to learn new skills. They might also need increased time to work through a complicated situation or decision. But they should still eventually be able to do all these things. And these kinds of changes, slower processing as we get older, should not be substantial enough to interfere with independence in the ability to perform daily life tasks that the person has always performed. Things like preparing a meal or doing their finances, if that's something they've done their whole life. So what is not normal? First of all, what's not normal is to develop a poor short-term memory. That is not normal. So what's also not normal would be delusions. So believing something that most people don't believe to be true, like that somebody keeps stealing your stuff. Actually, that would be a delusion, assuming that your stuff isn't getting stolen. Hallucinations, seeing things that other people don't see or hearing things that other people don't hear, or new paranoia. That should not be considered normal. Repeating oneself, repeating a question, repeating a story over and over again, not normal. Personality changes. Somebody who used to be super polite and tactful and now is blurting out all kinds of inappropriate things. Somebody who used to be very outgoing and now has become quite withdrawn. That would not be considered normal. Also not normal is losing interest in activities that one used to enjoy or becoming unable to enjoy them. Difficulty managing finances, again, these are things that are not normal. So what you want to do to check on memory and thinking is you want to take notes on whether your parent is showing concerning signs and how often. And I do have a list of 21 signs in the book, and I'll also be doing another episode soon, posting another episode that covers those in more depth. And you want to note, are they having this kind of problem, never, sometimes, or often? For a worrisome sign, it's also really helpful if you can jot down about when it started happening. And then you want to use your own observations. So if you can go spend time with them, you can kind of be looking for worrisome signs. And then you also want to check with other people who often interact with your aging parent. So somebody who lives with them, or a friend who sees them really regularly, a neighbor, a work colleague. Those are other people that you could check in with. And for this stage, I recommend being discreet and diplomatic. People can be very touchy and sensitive about issues happening with their memory or thinking. Also, many older adults who are experiencing problems with their memory or thinking are unaware, actually, of how significant it is. Others are aware and they're very defensive. So you can potentially ask them if they've noticed anything, but you definitely want to be tactful about it. So next thing to check on is, what are they having difficulty with? So specifically, this means checking in on how they're doing with what we call daily life tasks. In geriatrics, they're also referred to often as activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living. So the activities of daily living are these basic life skills that we often learn very early in life, essentially in early childhood, by the time we're 5. Things like dressing yourself, grooming yourself, using the toilet and managing your continence, bathing and showering, feeding oneself, walking. These are activities of daily living. And then we have instrumental activities of daily living, which we often call IADLs. And these are the more complicated skills that we learn as teenagers, and they're necessary to live as a sort of independent adult who might live on one's own. So they include things like managing finances, managing transportation, food shopping and meal preparation, managing your communications, phone, mail, today, email and text, home maintenance, medications. And again, those are usually learned in the teenage years. So why do we want to check on these? Well, it's important to have a practical sense of what kind of daily life activities is the person struggling with. Because first of all, if they are struggling significantly with that, that indicates a space where we might later want to provide some extra support and assistance. Second of all, if they are having any trouble with memory or thinking, whether it's bad enough to affect their ability to manage those tasks is an important criteria in determining how serious the problem is. It's actually also a criteria in determining, for instance, whether it might be mild cognitive impairment versus something that's a little further along. So third thing to check on is safety issues. And so here are some of the safety issues that I check people on if I'm involved with a family. So first of all, there are memory-related safety issues like wandering, forgetting the stove, poor safety awareness. There are driving-related safety issues like having accidents, close calls, getting lost driving, getting many tickets, worrying your passengers. There are finance-related safety issues like having unpaid bills, falling for scams, financial losses, or signs of financial exploitation. So you can see these are all issues where there's a potentially real risk of physical harm or serious consequences. So for instance, when people don't pay their bills, they can potentially have their utilities cut off, which can have implications for their safety and well-being. And then there are living situation related safety issues, such as dangerous amounts of clutter in the home. And then for medication related ones, are they taking their medications as directed, or are they often not taking medication? Or some people are even taking too many medications. They may not have noticed that they have extra bottles. Occasionally we run into that as well. And then there are some sort of health-related safety issues that I think about, such as having frequent falls, frequently going to the emergency department, or frequent hospitalizations. So that is the overview of the detective work. So really briefly, Have you noticed any signs of memory or thinking problems? What daily life tasks are they having difficulty with? Which activities of daily living are they having trouble with, if any? Which instrumental activities of daily living are they having trouble with? And are there any safety problems that are occurring? Okay, so let's now move on to the other part of taking stock, which is getting your parents' take, meaning getting your parents' perspective on this. So, how do they see all of this? Before we start telling them, why they should be concerned or what they should do, it's actually really important to better understand how do they see it. Are they aware of the issue? How serious do they think it is? If they are aware, what are their concerns and desires related to it? How were they thinking it should be handled? And then I think taking their perspective on a given issue that you're concerned about is best considered in light of how they see their life overall. So generally, when I'm in this stage of working with an older person who maybe needs more help, I also want to know, well, in general, what's most important to them these days? What's on their mind? What are their priorities? What are they concerned or worried about? Maybe they're not concerned or worried about this thing that I've noticed or that their adult child has brought to my attention, but they might have something else that's really concerning to them. And it's really useful when we can understand what are the priorities and primary concerns of an older person. What do they want most out of their life, out of their medical care? So how do we learn all this? We learn this through having what I call sort of listening conversations, where the purpose is to really listen to the older person and help them feel heard and validated. The purpose is not to get them to understand or convince them to do something. It's not the time for that kind of conversation right now. And when we have these kinds of listening conversations, there are two big benefits that we get. One is that we gain really useful information, about how they're seeing it, what's important to them, and we'll be able to use that later during the taking action phase to present an idea or try to nudge them to do something that might be in their best interest. And then it also really increases the sense of connection between you and your aging parent. It bolsters up the relationship capital, which is really a good thing. So I will later be doing an episode with more that goes a little bit more in depth onto how to have these conversations. But just for now, let me share some tips. So first of all, to get started, one option is to go with a kind of broad approach, which is to say something like, so how are things these days? Or how's the house? And just see what they bring up. See if they bring up the issue that you have been concerned about, right? The clutter or the unpaid bills or, whatever it is. And whatever it is they bring up, ask some questions about it. Tell me more, find out how they see it. Then if they haven't brought up the issue you're concerned about, you can say something like, well, I noticed, and you insert a very specific observation. Like, I noticed some unpaid bills, and I noticed that the power might be shut off. I was wondering if you could tell me more about it. And you stop there and you just see what they say about it. Now, people sometimes start off by sitting there and being like, listen, I'm concerned about this or that. I don't really recommend that approach. I think it tends to put older adults on the defensive right away to hear that you're concerned. So I think it's better to just name a very specific thing that happened or that, you can observe or that you heard, and then just ask them to tell you a little bit more about it and see what they say. And to kind of continue the conversation, you can say, tell me more. You can say, how do you feel about that? Now, they might tell you that didn't happen. If that's the case, don't argue. Don't try to explain why it did happen. Just make note. Interesting, right? Or you could say, that's strange because so-and-so, thought it had. You can mention it just once and see what they say, but I wouldn't go insisting that something happened if they're telling you that it did not happen. A few more tips that tend to help these conversations. Consider having the talk one-on-one. That's often, I think, a little bit more comfortable for older adults than being surrounded by a bigger group that, that can feel like an interrogation. I would also expect it to take a few conversations. I mean, often we bring up something, they may or may not engage in it, and we have to bring it up again. If your aging parent gets upset or defensive, back off. Consider coming back to it another time. Also, see if you can validate them if they're getting upset or defensive, right? And then really don't argue if their version of reality is different than what's been observed. You do want to make note of that disconnect, but you don't want to get too much into trying to convince them that something happened or reorient them to reality if it seems like they're disconnected from reality. Because the goal here is to better understand their perspective, their fears, and their desires. So, in short, if you have been worried about your aging parent or another older loved one, stop arguing, trying to get them to understand, trying to explain why you're concerned, or trying to get them to change things. And instead, become a detective and take stock of the situation. So, do your best to gather the facts on the ground, get your parents' perspective as well. And the reason for this is that this will give you a much better foundation for what will be coming next. You'll be better able to investigate options. That's that, taking aim research phase. You'll be better equipped to request help from your parents' doctors, and you'll be better equipped to eventually take action. And again, if you want to learn more about these steps, I go over them in depth in my book, and I will also be doing some episodes coming up that go into some of these steps in a little bit more depth to help you out. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this episode helpful, if you're here on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe. It does help more people find the channel. If you've been listening to the audio version on the podcast feed, come take a look at the video when you get a chance. You'll see my key points being displayed on the screen. So thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you all again on a future episode of the Helping Older Parents video podcast.